Welcome along to another edition of Matchbook's Weekend Football Podcast. Got a brand new guest on the podcast this week, Jonathan Wilson from The Guardian, the award-winning journalist himself. He's replacing Adrian Clark. Jonathan, you're on our Champions League podcast, for those who don't know, and a great show last night. We called it pretty well. We were very surprised to see Wolfsburg at 2.3, and it played out exactly the way you said with that counter-attack goal, especially that first one with a Coney belting down the right wing. Great to see.
Yeah, we had a bit of an iffy Tuesday with one no bet and one that didn't come in, and then three winners last night. But that Lille one was definitely they were what, 3.35 or something?
Yeah,
kickoff. So yeah, delighted with that.
Crazy. We will not be back in Wolfsburg at 2.3 unless they're maybe home to Paderborn or Gunter Freud or something like that. Mark O'Hare, you've been in terrific form. We flagged it as well on the Champions League podcasts. 13 winners from your last 14 selections of Matchbook Insights. Your best bet last week, Sampdoria and Lazio over 2.5. It was up after about 29 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, it was. To be fair to Lazio, they came out absolutely flying and took advantage of Sampdoria's kind of laziness and sleepiness and scored pretty quickly. Ciro Immobile was in great form as well, but Samp a bit back in the second half, a little bit better as well. But Italy at the moment has been a goals haven, and so we've got a couple of selections from Serie A later on in the show as well.
Oh, we sure do. And 4 Premier League games we're going to cover, and we're going to start with Liverpool and Aston Villa. I don't know if you guys know, Aston Villa's manager used to play for Liverpool. That will not be discussed this week at all. This isn't going to narrative country here at all, but we will take a look at the betting. Liverpool at 1.26. No surprise there, they're pretty short. Aston Villa 14.0. The draw available of 7.4. Villa getting a 1 3/4 goal start at 2.08. 3.5 is the total and shade towards the under. Mark, Gerrard has come in there. They've had 4 games, 3 wins, but with all due respect to the likes of Palace, Brighton, and Leicester, this is a very different beast that they're taking on here on Saturday.
Yeah, definitely. I think the gap between the top 3 and the rest in the Premier League is pretty vast, and you can see that in the lines and prices we're getting served up now on a weekly basis. And you look at Liverpool, what they did in midweek in Milan, not needing a result at all, but they made history for an English team, and they did so without Van Dijk, Henderson, Jota. Thiago had 22 shots at San Siro. Even before Milan knew the game was up, really, Liverpool were the better team, really. And you look at what they did last week in what was a tricky game on paper against a defensively sound Wolves team who resisted pretty well. But Liverpool were by far the better team on the day, 17 shots to 3 in their favour. Should have scored more before they did actually get the goal. And that was only the second time this season across all competitions they failed to score at least twice in a match, which is quite remarkable considering we're entering sort of mid-December now. And I looked at the expected points rankings, and I've now got Liverpool pretty much neck and neck with Manchester City at the top of the Premier League, which is really quite impressive. City are normally quite clear in that barometer. They dominated pretty much every match bar 2 against City and Chelsea. So yeah, Villa have been pretty resurgent under Steven Gerrard, but this is a much different test for them, and it'll be a good test to see how far they're actually coming or how far they've evolved, because they've started the last 2 games pretty slowly against Man City and Leicester, fallen behind. But then we've seen the good side of Villa. And I think outside of possession, they've been pretty decent too, quite physical, quite imposing, pressing from the front as well. And I do think they do have the quality to cause Liverpool a couple of problems, particularly from set pieces. We saw West Ham cause Liverpool issues in that department, and Villa have certainly been that good. The likes of Mings and Konza in particular. Counter-attacks too. They've been energised off a full week's training as well. So I do find this game quite difficult. You always do when you've got a big handicap. Do you really want to be backing a team around sort of even money to win by 3 or more goals to be paid out? Not really for me. So in these kind of situations, I go for something a bit bigger. I thought Liverpool to win and both teams to score around 2.7 was an interesting. My model makes it around 2.5. As I say, I think Villa can cause some issues in set pieces. I think they can cause issues in counter-attacks, but ultimately you expect Liverpool to win the game. You expect Liverpool to score at least twice, because that's just what Liverpool are doing at the moment. And I think if you're kind of opposing Liverpool or opposing goals, you don't really be watching this game from kind of behind the sofa, sort of begging for a low-scoring tie. So nothing hugely of interest to me, but I thought the 2.7 wasn't bad at all.
Jonathan, I know you're pretty bullish on your Liverpool selection, but talk to me about the first 4 games of the Gerrard regime. Been impressed so far?
Yeah, hugely impressive. I think that shape, the sort of quite narrow 4-3-3 with the width coming from the fullbacks, I think that suits them. I think it suits the squad. I mean, the squad is weirdly unbalanced with about 15 right wingers. But then he did switch that slightly against Palace. Was defender slightly more from the front rather than the fullbacks getting forward. So, I like what Gerrard's done. And then a stat which I think actually speaks well of Gerrard as a manager, but which I think can play in our favour here is of the 7 goals they've scored under him, 5 have been in the second half. Now, that suggests he is able to change things positively at half time. But I think Liverpool last week's win was the first win they've had this season. So 7 of 8 wins this season. They've been ahead at half time and gone on to win it. So I think Liverpool half time, full time makes sense because Villa tend to be better in the second half. Liverpool tend to go out hard and strong. I think there is a danger that narrow 4-3-3. I think that probably is the formation Liverpool least like to face. That they're sort of matched up in midfield. That narrow 4-3-3, those wide players in the front three can get in behind the fullbacks and behind Liverpool's fullbacks. And if Villa's fullbacks get forward, they can create overloads there. I think there is a doubt about Matt Targett's fitness, which possibly could count against that. So I would expect Liverpool to win. And then, it's as Mark said, it's a case of where can you find value? And I think those two details, 7 of Liverpool's 8 wins this season have been ahead of half time, and 5 out of the 7 goals Villa have scored in the Gerrard come in the second half suggests that they will be ahead at half time as well. So Liverpool half time, full time would be my tip.
Yeah, and of course it could work both ways. Mark's selection there that if Villa did pick up a goal in the second half. But yeah, look, I in terms of picking a bet here, I think that's probably the safer angle here. Liverpool to be winning at halftime to win a full time is double result at 1.8. All right, a strong selection there and an interesting game at Anfield on Saturday afternoon. Next game I want to talk about is Chelsea and Leeds. Chelsea, I don't know, can we say they're in a bad run of form potentially? They're 1.31 at home to Leeds, 12.0 you can back Leeds, the draw available at 5.9. The main handicap line, Leeds are getting a 1.5 goal start at even money at matchbook.com at 2.0. 3 is the total at 1.87. Jonathan, with Chelsea, we've seen in the last couple of weeks, I mean, look, I know with this game is Zenit, they were missing a few, but they're missing a few here as well in the midfield. I think Jorginho's down, Kante's down, and Kovacic. But where would we be making too much of these last 2 or 3 games, or should we be looking at this one?
I mean, I think there was a slightly they 12 games unbeaten before that since the Juve game, but I think there was a sense the defeat in Juve. I mean by that, I think there was a sense in those 12 games they weren't really at their best. I mean, the game at home to Juve, they're obviously very impressive, but I think that was partly Juve not actually being very good. Yeah. The gaps in midfield were a big issue. Saul has started 2 games in midfield, been taken off at half time on both occasions. Loftus-Cheek, I think, is fine there, but he needs more defensive presence alongside him. Saul wasn't able to provide that. So if Jorginho is out, he's definitely struggling with that knee. Then that is an issue. I think even against West Ham, you sort of saw Jorginho sort of collapse that last sort of half of the second half. That his energy levels dipped quite significantly. I think that's an indication of the toll that's been placed on him this season, with others being out. Chilwell out as well. Chalobah at the back not there. So the 6 goals conceded in the last 2 games. I mean, okay, Zenit, it was a weakened team, but it wasn't that weakened. No. So that will be a concern. We did see this last season when they suddenly let in 5 from no against West Brom, and the response was to go back to basics, keep it tight. I would assume it'd be something similar here. And Leeds have struggled for goals this season. They should have Bamford back. He came off the bench last week and scored. But as soon as they get him and Ayling back, they then go and lose Calvin Phillips and Liam Cooper. Cooper, obviously, a huge presence at the back. And Phillips, not just an important figure defensively in midfield, but I think the pace at which he plays the ball forward is very important in Leeds' counter. So I think it's very hard to see Leeds. I mean, maybe they'll get 1, but it's very hard to see them scoring more than that. I think Chelsea probably will win. So Chelsea to win and under 3.5 seems to me the way to go here.
Yeah, it's a 2.2 shot. Mark, we've never had this one before. Chelsea and under 3.5. Can you remember us back in this at some stage? No?
Yeah, it tends to be the podcast staple when Chelsea are involved. Yeah. I was alarmed really by Chelsea's performance at Zenit. I know they probably attacked the game as if they didn't have anything to really play for. I know they had top spot in the pool to play for, but they gave away so many opportunities, and Kepa was arguably their man of the match despite the game ending 3-3. But I mean, I look at their recent performances and you can say that they're not in form and they're giving away goals, but they come from silly errors. We saw it against Man United. We saw it against West Ham with Mendy as well. So, yeah, I agree with Jonathan. I think there's probably a case for Thomas Tuchel to go back to basics here and just try and grind something out, because it's a tough schedule going from Wednesday to Saturday turnaround, going from Russia to playing Leeds at home, a very energetic Leeds team, particularly when you're missing a whole host of midfielders as well. So, is Mount going to have to step back and play a bit more a deeper role, which obviously will affect the attack as well. But as Leeds are missing Calvin Phillips, you've basically got two of the most influential players on both teams in Kante and Phillips absent. So Bamford will be a big boost, but yeah, going forward, they haven't looked quite the same. So it's basically down to Rafinha to conjure up something or nothing else really in Leeds' perspective. So they've been on a decent-ish run, 1 defeat and 7, but they always tend to get cut adrift or cut open really by the elite teams of the Premier League. They've lost all 4 against the top 6 this term, conceding 12 goals. Their only away clean sheet came at Brighton, who really could and should have scored in that match as well. And they've only scored twice or more on 3 occasions this season, which isn't the Leeds that we know. So, originally I was kind of looking at opposing goals in some way or form. Only 5 of Leeds' 13 games have gone over 2.5 goals this season, and I think only 1's gone over 3.5 as well. So under 3 goals, I thought was set quite high. But yeah, I think the obvious thing to do is actually take the bigger price on Chelsea to win the match and under 3.5 goals, knowing that there can be 3 goals in the game. We still get paid out. If you don't believe Leeds are going to score twice, it's hard to see there being 4 or more goals and them all coming from Chelsea. So I just think laboured Chelsea after midweek travels, midfield missing, could contribute to a low scoring game.
Yeah, Leeds love the trip to London. They have such a terrific record. They haven't won at Stamford Bridge since 1999, December 1999. Very different word back then. All right, Chelsea to win it on 3.5 to 2.2, and that is the selection from the guys for that game. Next game we're going to look at is Newcastle's trip to Leicester to take on the Foxes. Obviously some COVID doubts here with Leicester, but we'll talk about that in a second. 1.75 you can back Leicester City here. 4.9 Newcastle, the draw available at 4.2. Newcastle are getting a 3/4 goal start on the Asian handicap at 1.96 is 1.96 the other side as well, and 3 is the total. Marco, here, this was your game of choice, and obviously I think when you picked this, we weren't aware obviously of the COVID doubts, and obviously Leicester are still in Europe while we're recording this on Thursday morning. But either ways, I think you're expecting that. You've touched on the last couple of weeks in Newcastle. They are opening things up, that it could be a bit more of a goal-laden affair here.
Yeah, I think it's more kind of emphasis on Leicester to be brutal about it. Ordinarily, I'd like to try and oppose them in some way. Just 3 Premier League wins in 12. Can't defend set pieces to save their lives. Or can't defend at all, actually, to save their lives. But yeah, COVID and illness has been an issue. They're away at Napoli on Thursday night as well. So you've got the travel issues. There's enough red flags there for me to suggest that Leicester could be taken on. Only 3 teams have conceded more goals in the Premier League. They've not kept a clean sheet since the opening day. Brendan Rodgers keeps talking about their Achilles heel in defence and trying to see improvements, where there's no improvements at all at the moment. And I've got them down in the bottom 3 on expected points. And he mixed things up a little bit against Villa in every department, really, bar centre half, where Söyüncü and Evans continued, and Vestergaard was on the bench again. But he's now one of the ill players, so we're still going to see that centre-back partnership playing again this weekend. There could be more illness, there could be more injuries we don't know about, but Tielemans and Bertrand are at least back available, which should in theory help them going forward more than defensively. So Leicester have conceded twice or more in 9 of the last 11 games. They've kept 2 clean sheets across all competitions this season, only 3 clean sheets in 30 Premier League games, 2 of which were against relegated clubs. And in terms of expected goals against, they're amongst the worst in the division. So I've been a little bit disappointed, I have to be brutal, about Newcastle going forward under Eddie Howe so far. I've not been bowled over by their efforts, and I know the game against Norwich was disrupted by that red card. But against Burnley, I did expect them to be a bit more front foot. I thought Burnley caused them a few issues too. But yeah, if you look on paper, both teams' key areas of strength is certainly in attack, and their weaknesses are definitely defence. So they've actually combined to score in 24 of their collective 30 Premier League games, but only managed 2 clean sheets in that 30-game sample collectively. They both top the charts in terms of both teams to score, 11 from 15, and overs has landed in 11 of Leicester's 15 as well. So you would normally expect Leicester to win this game, but I'd rather cheer on goals. So I think over 2 3/4 goals is the way to go, around 176.
Yeah, Jonathan, are you in agreement on this one?
Yeah, completely. I mean, Newcastle's 1-0 win over Burnley was their first clean sheet of the season. But I absolutely wouldn't trust them defensively at all. I think they've still got huge problems at the back of midfield. Leicester, I think that the way Brendan Rodgers' teams play is naturally very open, very attacking. They conceded 50 goals last season, which was the worst defensive record in the top 8. This season, I mean, Mark's touched on it, that you're fourth worst in terms of goals conceded, sixth worst in terms of XG conceded. Obviously, Fofana's absence is an issue. I think Schmeichel hasn't been quite as dominant this season as he can be. And I always look at the fact that they haven't had a consistent fullback pairing has been an issue. Evans being out for a while has been an issue. But also the back of midfield has been a big problem. That Ndidi, I think, at the beginning of last season looked superb, and he got that knee injury in January. And although he only missed 5 games, I just don't think he's ever quite got back to the same level. If you have a fully firing Ndidi plus Tielemans alongside him, I think that's a really effective midfield, deep midfield pair. But Tielemans, though he's been great this season, obviously coming back from injury. Ndidi, I still, as I say, I don't think quite is back to his best from that knee injury last year. So always going to be chances against Leicester. Newcastle, I don't trust. And I was really worried as well. I mean, maybe this is me with my Sunderland fans hat on, but the way they celebrated that win over Burnley, it's just sort of like, it's a 1-0 win over Burnley, lads. I mean, it's great. It's your first win of the season, and every journey begins with a first step. And I get that's a big relief, but it's going to take a lot more than that to stay up.
Yeah.
And 4 points in 2 home games in the same week against the other 2 teams in the bottom 3 is sort of a minimum requirement. So I think this is a big test for them, and I can sort of see if they don't get off to a good start, if they went behind early, psychologically, I think that's not a good place to be in. If I mean, who knows what was actually happening in their heads? But the sense I got was that certainly on the part of some fans that the dawn is here. It's just sort of sunlit uplands ahead, and I really don't think that's the case. I think it's going to be a grim fight, certainly until January, and probably beyond. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, over 2.75 is currently available at 1.78 at matchbook.com. That'll appear inside at 2.5/3.0. The last game, the main slate we want to talk about, is Southampton's trip to North London to take on Arsenal. The current betting as we have it at matchbook.com, Arsenal you could back at 1.68, Southampton at 5.7, the draw available 4.0. Southampton getting a 3/4 of a goal start on the Asian handicap at 2.04. And it's the exact same goal line as a previous game. 2.75 is the main line here. Slightly shade towards the under at 1.87. Jonathan, Arsenal's home form in comparison to away form, very different. They've been very strong here in the last couple of weeks. In fact, they only lost early in the season to Chelsea. Southampton are leaking goals away from home. And I think you were chatting pre-recording too. They have a few injury doubts. So it all points towards Arsenal here.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of think Arsenal are infinitely opposable in any game that's mildly difficult. That run of 8 games unbeaten when they had 6 wins, and everybody got very excited. Who were the 6 wins against? Norwich, Burnley, a Spurs who were about to sack the manager, a Villa who were about to sack the manager, a Leicester who we just talked about, and Watford, where, to be honest, they were really lucky against Watford. But yeah, the goal probably shouldn't have stood. And as soon as they've come up against harder opponents, they faltered. And I think, as much as anything else, they still just don't have that sort of mental fortitude. And Southampton, I think, are a difficult team. I think they're not a team who concede many goals. They have leaked a few away from home recently, but fundamentally they're difficult to play against. I think you see that in Hasenhüttl's record against Arsenal, that he's played them 7 times, only lost 3. Which, if you think of the differential in quality between the 2 squads, is a decent record. So I was sort of thinking, looking at the unders here, Southampton don't score goals. With Aubameyang and Lacazette not being in good form, that I thought there was an opportunity there. And then I sort of considered the Southampton injuries, the fact that McCarthy's out, Forster's probably out, so they brought in 40-year-old Willy Caballero on loan, Bednarek's out, Romeo and Salisu both suspended, Stuart Armstrong's out, and I don't know how significant this ever is, but I do think when you have a record as bad as not having won away at a club in 26 attempts, eventually that does feed through, maybe not necessarily to the players, but to the fans, and that can transmit itself to players. So I've slightly modified my earlier thinking that to go sort of under 2.75 and think, an Arsenal win, but also probably quite low scoring. So Arsenal win and under 4.5, I think is probably the way to go.
Yeah, it's currently 2.06 at matchbook.com. Mark, in agreement there at this minute?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because originally when I saw the prices, I thought, oh my God, the Arsenal price is absolutely disgusting. Sub 1.7 to beat Southampton at the Emirates. Not for me, thanks. But actually, the more I dig, the more I need to find an Arsenal angle into this game, because traditionally this is where Arsenal do their best work at home as strong favourites against bottom half teams. So I did the maths, and over the past 5 seasons, they've got a 74% win rate at home against bottom half teams in the Premier League. This season, they've won 5, drawn 1, and lost 0 at home to teams outside the top 4. If you look at the odds, when Arsenal have been odds-on favourites at home in the Premier League over the last 5 seasons, they've got a 78% win record. So they're really consistent in this bracket. And also, I kind of looked at the performance data, excluded the top 3, who I think we all agree are miles away from the rest, and basically stripped out all the games involving those 3 teams to see who's been the most dominant performers. And Arsenal come out top of almost all the metrics in terms of expected points, expected goals, shots, chances, the lot really. So basically what we're saying is Arsenal have been the better team outside of the top 3 when you exclude those big teams. And we know Arsenal have been bashed by some of those as well. So results-wise, in those 12 games, they've won 7, which would be actually joint top with Man United of that league table. As I say, they're comfortably clear in almost all the major metrics. So suddenly that 1.7 doesn't look so bad. And when you tie in, as Jonathan says, with the Southampton injuries and suspensions, particularly in goal, and particularly I think Salisu at the back, who I think has probably been the player of the season so far, there are issues. Now, I know Arsenal are coming off that rotten result against Everton, which seems very typical Arsenal, but they have been making very small steps in the right direction, particularly at the Emirates. I think if you look at their first 11, they are building a youthful team with potential there, and I think they'll be keen to sort of bounce back. But I haven't got Southampton right too often this season, and when you look at their league table position and the results, they are quite a confusing team. So they've lost fewer games than Arsenal, Wolves and Leicester. They've lost the same number of games as Spurs and United. West Ham have only lost 1 game fewer than Southampton, but it's their inability to score goals in the final third, which has kind of been their downfall, really, whereas defence has been their key asset. And we look at the players who are missing this weekend, it's going to be an area of weakness. So, yeah, I thought odds against an Arsenal to win and under 4.5 goals just boost that price, doesn't make it quite so ugly, considering that only 2 of the combined 30 games involving these 2 teams have featured 5 or more goals, and both for Arsenal's defeats when they went to City and United. So, yeah, I think Arsenal win a low-scoring game.
Yeah, Arsenal under 4.5 is 2.06. Don't forget, you can do, if you want to be a bit more adventurous there, you can go down to 3.5 or even 2.5 and go the other way as well for a bigger price. All right, let's do a very quick recap of what we have there so far, gents, before we get to the latter stages. So we started off the Liverpool-Villa game. We selected half-time, full-time there, as Jonathan showed, at 1.8. Chelsea to win against Leeds and under 3.5 goals is currently priced at 2.2. That was our second selection. Over 2.75 in Leicester. Newcastle was the third selection. And we just touched it there, Arsenal, and under 4.5 at 2.06. All those prices are available at matchbook.com currently. And if you do not have a Matchbook account and you would like to sign up today, we've got a very special offer for you. And that you can see it behind the screen in front of me there. It's a £15 welcome offer. And if you use the bonus code INSIGHTSRF, risk-free, INSIGHTSRF, you will be able to avail of that offer. Check out insights.matchbook.com for full details and terms and conditions of that offer. Jonathan, well-known Sunderland fan, but you've no problem in opposing them this week at home to Plymouth. You're taking Plymouth with a half a goal start at 1.85.
Yeah, which, I mean, Plymouth are on a bit of a rocky run. They're only taking 1 point from the last 4 games. But their away record is decent. They've only lost 2 away from home this season. Now, Sunderland's home form is very good. Yeah, won 8 out of 10, only lost 1. But Sunderland haven't won 2 games in a row since the beginning of October. They were very good in beating Morecambe 5-0 on Tuesday. But I look at that team that Lee Johnson selected, and it terrifies me, frankly. There's just too many attacking players. So Djaku, the on-loan forward from Union Berlin, who ended up getting the 5th goal, but he was playing left wing back, which, I mean, he can't do that again. So there's got to be changes. Lyndon Gooch is fine playing at wing back. Don't have a problem with that. The back in midfield, Dan Neil, lovely young player, really creative, passes the ball very well, but he needs a defensive presence alongside him. Corey Evans hasn't really worked. Luke O'Nien is injured. So Carl Winchester played there midweek. He's more normally a fullback. Again, that doesn't fill me with a huge amount of confidence. So it was one of those 5-0 wins where it was just so open. I mean, Morecambe had a couple of decent chances. I admit they were 2-0 down. I had a goal ruled out for offside. That I felt it was a 5-0. It just sort of covered up a whole load of potential issues. So I just think Sunderland are far too short. So I can see this being quite frustrating. As the Oxford game was that last weekend? Yes, last weekend before. No, yeah, last weekend. When Sunderland looked like they were going to win and ended up, it took the lead, but then sort of it all fell apart. So I can see something similar happening here. So Plymouth plus a half. It's just under evens.
Yeah, it's actually a bigger price than I quoted there. It's actually 1.98. Head over heart. I like that, Jonathan. Good job. Marco here.
Right, it's an emotional hedge, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I went either way here.
There you go, yeah. Adrian Clark is pretty good with doing that with Arsenal as well, so you're fitting him pretty
well,
good.
I'm going up for that game as well. It'll be the first Sunderland game I've seen live this season.
So you're going to put your money down on Plymouth, but actually, I love it.
Yeah. Can't lose.
Yeah, you absolutely can.
One of the two.
Exactly, yeah. Marco here, just for a change of scenery, we're going to Italy this weekend. We never go to Italy for goals bets, but hey, they just keep on winning, so why not? And look, Mark, I mean, look, we've touched on it in previous shows. Anyone who thinks that Catenaccio is still going in Italy, it's very much not. Last weekend was absolute bonkers.
Yeah, so 7 of 10 games went over 2.5. 7 of 10 went both teams to score. I think almost half the division scored at least 3 goals away from home. Half the away teams, I should say, scored at least 3 goals. Yeah. Remarkable, really. And the league average is up at 3.09 goals. Overs coming in at 62% win rate, over 3.5 goals in 40% of games, which is like mega. And both teams to score are just shy of 60% as well. So just great fun. And I think if these matches were taking place in the Bundesliga in the same environment, you'd be looking at much higher lines and much shorter prices. So Verona versus Atalanta was the one that really stood out. It says 1.71 there on the screen for over 2 3/4. Just had a quick look right live now. It's 1.74, which is really, really appealing. Requiring just 3 goals for a payout, 4 or more for a full stakes payout. We know all about Atalanta's approach under Gasperini. Don't need to go over old ground there. They're going to go forward. They're going to try and attack and score goals. They're playing in good form right now, but also with that postponement in the Champions League, now they have to play on Thursday for a Sunday turnaround, which obviously eats into their recovery and preparation time, which should encourage Verona, who under Igor Tudor have been fantastic fun, actually. Failed to score just twice all season. They've scored twice or more in 10 of their 16. Considering Atalanta have just 4 clean sheets across League and Champions League this season, you would expect the home team to score. So if that is the case, suddenly those kind of goal markets come into play. Collectively, they've played 32 games in Serie A this season. They've scored in 29 of those and kept just 6 clean sheets. Both teams have scored in 78% of those. Overs has copped in 75%, and over 3.5 goals is paid out in 18 of 32, which is 56%. So you look at the goals per game averages involving these two teams. Verona at 3.75, Atalanta at 3.38. I don't think it's a huge amount to ask for at least 3 goals in this game.
Yeah, and look, we touched on Lazio as well last week. So they head to Sassuolo. Yeah, Sarri ball is scoring lots, conceding lots, and yeah, it's going to continue this weekend by the looks of things.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm more kind of keen to look at Sassuolo coming into this game because they've taken their time to get going since Roberto De Zerbi left in the summer. But they have been playing some good football in recent weeks, particularly since the start of October, where they gave Inter Milan a really tough game, lost 2-1 at home at the very beginning of October. But since then, they've been scoring goals for fun. They've held Napoli. They've beaten Milan away at San Siro. They've beaten Juventus away in Turin as well. So they're in good form. They've scored in 12 successive games. They've actually scored at least twice in 8 of the last 9. And the last 10 have seen both teams scoring because, again, typically it's Serie A. They're failing to sort of keep the back door shut. Just 2 shutouts all season. So naturally the goal figures are going to be strong. And yeah, we've talked about Lazio quite a lot recently. Credit to Sarri really for putting on that decent show at Sampdoria, and I guess it is only Sampdoria, but just 2 clean sheets for them in Serie A this season. They're also involved in Europa League action on Thursday night. Immobile is missing, or looks like he's going to be missing through injury. Milinkovic-Savic is suspended as well, but I think they've got enough in forward areas to score against this Sassuolo team. You look at the teams who have scored against Sassuolo, it's not a great ask for Lazio to get a goal, but I think defensively they can be suspect. But yeah, you can do the crude thing again of just kind of combining both teams' records. They've scored in 26 of 32, kept just 4 clean sheets, both teams scoring in 23, over 2.5 in 29, over 3.5 in 18 of those 32 as well. Lazio are actually top of the Serie A charts for goals per game, 3.88, and Sassuolo coming at 3.19 as well. So difficult not to expect goals in these games.
I wonder what Trapattoni and the likes of Capello would think of this current Serie A climate. Goals all over the shop. All right, just before we get to best bets, some good angles there from Mark and Jonathan. But before we get to best bets, if you are enjoying this content, you're listening to us on your podcast app, please leave us a preferential review. And if you're watching us on our YouTube channel, please click the thumbs up on this video and click the subscribe button. It does help get our content out to a larger audience. All right, best bet time, Jonathan. We already covered it at the top. Liverpool halftime, full-time for you.
Yeah, I like that. I have to say, as we're going through it, I was thinking maybe that Chelsea under 3.5 is a bit of a better bet. But given I said this and given we got the caption, I'll go with. It's those two stats I kept coming back to. That Villa have scored 5 or 7 goals in the second half, and Liverpool of their 8 wins this season, 7 have been halftime, full-time wins. So yeah, I'm happy enough with that.
You can call that 1A. We call the other one 1B if you want.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
No issue there. All right, Mark, your best bet. You're kind of jumping back into the Serie A here in a BTTS double.
Yeah, to be brutal about it, I couldn't pick which one of the two I wanted to put up as my best bet. So I thought just combine the two and back both teams to score in both. I highlighted the defensive issues for all 4 teams, but also we know that all 4 teams like to play on the front foot, like to score goals and play good football. So kind of just makes sense to back both teams score in both matches, which is what I'll do in a double. Yeah,
it's currently available at 2.1. That might get a small bit bigger closer to the kickoff, but at the moment it is 2.1. All right, gentlemen, we're out of time. My thanks to Jonathan for filling in. Jonathan will be also back next week. My thanks to Mark. Check out Mark's Insights piece at insights.matchbook.com. He will have more selections up there. One from Belgium this week, Mark. I like that. You're really delving into the European scene there. I love that. Going deep. We'll be back again next Thursday morning. Until then, the best of luck with your weekend bets, and goodbye for now.